This is Abbott242, and many of you may have noticed this is in fact the first video on my YouTube channel. I'm going to be playing Kerbal Space Program, a game which is just coming out of its indie stage, however it is still under heavy development. It's basically a game where you get to build and launch rockets, and explore the solar system. So today, I am going to create a new universe here, start new. Let's name it YouTube. And what I have planned today is I am going to try to replicate the United States Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo missions. Whoops, that was in the wrong order. Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, sorry. So today, this video will be on a Kerbal Space Program replica of Mercury. Project Kurcury. So, welcome to the Space Center here. This is the Kerbal Space Center, or KSC. We have the Vehicle Assembly Building, the Spaceplane Hangar, Astronaut Complex, the Flagpole, the soon-to-be-made Mission Control, as some speculate, the Launch Pad, and the Tracking Station. So let's go into the VIB here, the Vehicle Assembly Building. Alright, and many of you will see that I do in fact have mods installed on this. This game is in fact relatively easy to mod. You simply drag a folder into another folder. Mods can be found, I'll put this in the description, on the Kerbal, Spaceport. You simply download them and drag them into your Kerbal Space Program file for game data. So, most of the parts here I actually have are modded parts from B9 Aerospace, KWrocketry, and a few other little ones, like MechJeb, for instance. Mechanical Jeb. So let's start out. We'll choose a basic Command Pod Mark 1. This is where the Kerbals will live on their terrifying ride through the cosmos, and that is ultimately the core of your spacecraft. So we'll go into the Utility tab here, and first safety feature on this craft, which most Kerbal crafts do not have safety features, the Mark 16 parachute, to stop it from plummeting to its death. Whoops. You can simply attach parts to each other by dragging them onto the little green nodes. They'll turn green, you click, and there you go. Over here, you can see that I have a little parachute icon. This is the staging area. It will show engines, decouplers, they're explosive bolts which separate stages, and parachutes. They will be activated by pressing space. Speaking of decouplers, I will actually go into the Structural tab now. Why is it not working? Work. Oh, bit of lag. There we go. And select a decoupler. I can find one. All these parts. Most of these are B9 Aerospace parts, by the way. And there we go, the TR-18A stack decoupler from OMB Demolition Enterprises. If you want to read any parts that I scroll over, they do have handy little things just talking about the part. If you want to read that, then pause the video. So I'll select one of these. What this does is it separates the stage. So this command pod and parachute, if I activated that decoupler, it would separate it from, say, this random part here. They would split in half. So we'll take that, and when this is in orbit, we'll obviously need a way to get back down from orbit. So I'll make a little retrograde burner module out of, say, an ASAS module, or the Inline Advanced Stabilizer. I'll add an RCS tank. It holds monopropellant, it's called. In real life, this is actually compressed nitrogen. It's what astronauts use and spacecraft use to maneuver themselves, rotating and translating in the vacuum of space. So we'll take the FL-R25 RCS fuel tank, slap it on under there, as well as some RCS thruster ports, a set of hypergolic reaction control thrusters for attitude control and translation in space. Now if you look in the bottom here, this is symmetry mode. So normally you would see 1 appear on the craft, but if I say symmetry 8, or 4, what do you know, there's 4 of them that will appear in the exact same spot. If you have OCD, this can be useful. So I will plonk 4 down here at the, if you see this, center of mass. This allows me to translate. However, I don't want to translate. So correction, I won't do that. I'll place the Morso down here, and another set up here. This allows me to rotate easier. The farther they are from the center of mass, the more rotational strength you get, and the closer they are, the more translation strength you get. It's quite a few thrusters for such a tiny craft, actually. It will be very powerful. In fact, you know what? Ignore that previous comment. I'm fine with putting them just there. If it allows me. Will it? Yes. Alright, so we have RCS. We can now move in space. But it will also need a battery to use the cockpit's built-in stabilizers. Take the Z1K rechargeable battery bank. This holds electric charge, which your graphs can need. I'll switch back to the propulsion tab here, and take some utilage motors from KWrocketry. It's a mod. These are simply solid fuel rocket engines, which I will slap on here. These are what we will be burning retrograde to knock us out of orbit around our planet. By the way, the planet is called Kerbin. Just an FYI there. So this is what we'll send up into space with some innocent little creepers on it. We can switch to the crew tab and see Jebediah Kerman is going to be flying this craft. He has a bit of a legend behind him. He's just the, per se, famous Kerbal. He's the best one. If you have him, you're lucky, etc., etc. If any of you kill Jebediah, well, there's bad luck. Very bad luck. So, we shall grab another stack decoupler, pop it down under there, and have our first stage. Well, third or second, not sure yet, but this will be what puts us into orbit. So have a 1.25 meter liquid fuel tank, also from KWrocketry, and sorry, got a bit of a dry throat right now, actually. Let's go with, we'll say, the KWrocketry Vesta VR1 engine. That goes down there. There's one stage of the rocket. So the fuel tank basically drains into the engine, which will provide thrust for your craft, which accelerates or deaccelerates you, depending on where you're pointing. That doesn't seem to want to surround the engine. Normally, it will automatically create an interstage fairing. Because this is a modded part, don't think it does that. What I'll do is select one of the pre-made interstage fairings in here. 1.25 meter interstage decoupler. It surrounds the engine and just makes your rocket look a bit nicer. Because who wants to stare at ugly rockets all day? Not me. That should do pretty well. However, I'll add just back into structural, go down, and in fact, change my mind. Let's have a bit of a bigger rocket on the bottom part. I have a adapter interstage. Switch it out for this one. So it allows us to simply place bigger parts, bigger and better parts underneath this. The 2.5 meters. So, go with that, and let's choose, say, this one here. Nice, nah. That'll do. And I personally like to build my rockets way too big. In reality, this is way, way, way too big. We would be able to get to orbit with something much smaller than this, most likely. But I like to have a lot of excess delta V, excess fuel. Delta V, another FYI, fun fact, delta V is the amount of change in velocity you have. So if you're moving at, say, 1 meter per second, and you have 100 delta V, That means by using that, you can change your velocity from 1 meter per second to 101 meters per second. Or you could change it to 51 meters per second, and then back to 1 meters per second. 1 meter. Sorry. I'm not actually sure of the delta V to get to orbit around the planet here. But, we're most likely going to have a lot extra, no matter what it is. Ooh, this doesn't like me for some reason. I put it on the wrong way. There's our reason. What do you know? And this will be the first stage of the rocket. I'll come down with a Griffin G8D. No clipping into the floor. Let's raise up the rocket a bit. Alright, this should be enough to get us to orbit, but once again, I like to have extra fuel, so we'll go into structural and grab a radial decoupler. These are the same thing as the stack decouplers, it's just they're mounted onto the side of your craft. As you can see here, the TT38K radial decoupler. Mounted like this. I'll take these, plonk them, whoops, plonk them on, go back into propulsion. There's a lot of switching between tabs here and pages, finding parts, but it can be pretty fun. And I will grab some, say, Globe 6 SRBs, solid rocket boosters, and put those on here. So, here was our rocket. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Now back in staging here, you'll notice this has grown a lot bigger. So these here, when I hover over it, it highlights, those are the solid rocket boosters. Then these are the couplers for them, the main engine. We'll want to move those into the same slot actually. Decoupler for that engine, next engine, decoupler, engine, decoupler, retrograde boosters, decoupler, and finally our parachute. So we are going to call this, as a play on Mercury, everything in Kerbal Space Program starts with a K, not everything, but funny joke, so Kurcury. Kurcury 1. We'll save and launch it. Bit of lag here. But you won't see this because I'm deleting it. If I don't delete this, well, crap. Okay, so here we are, out in the rocket. Yeah, out in the launch pad. Rocket standing proud and high here. Ready for liftoff. There's Jebediah Kerman. We can IVA him. Interior vehicular activity. Looking around inside his very, very tiny capsule with a very, very tiny window, respectively. Monitors. Come out of that. You can actually look around. Here's the launch pad a bit closer up. All the other buildings in the Space Center. Some lovely mountains over there in the background. Our flag. And this is the navigation ball, the nav ball. It basically tells you where you're going, depending on where you're pointing. T will activate SAS, the autopilot system. R will activate RCS, the reaction control system, using the monopropellant. Shift and control, throttle up and down respectively. Throttle up to 2/3 throttle here. The other side is a G-force meter. And in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. And here we go. As you can see, lots and lots of fire. Our rocket is now coming off the launch pad. This is our speed relative to the surface. It is 60 meters per second, rapidly accelerating. Up here is our height. We're 500 meters above the ground. And that's where we are in the atmosphere, so still quite a ways to go before we reach space. You can see your shadow down there, which will soon be disappearing. They've enhanced the shadow range, actually, in the new updates. Still is over there. This is the fuel for our engines. There's a liquid fuel engine, all the solid fuel boosters. When I press space, the solid fuel boosters will decouple, meaning that they'll blow up their joints and fall off to their imminent demise. Lovely, right? Oh, bit of error here. Interesting. Okay. We are now coming up through the atmosphere with the rocket. You can see the sun. Not sure what that was. And getting a bigger, better view of Kerbin. That's the name of the planet, by the way. We are now 7 kilometers in the air, with our boosters about to run out of fuel. There they go, and 3, 2, 1, decoupled them, and they just fall peacefully floating back down to the ground. Our speed is now starting to decrease, actually. This main engine does not seem to be able to support us, so I will increase the throttle a bit. Now, general rule, 10,000 feet. I missed it. You are supposed to start turning to the 90 degrees marker by using the D key. This is called a gravity turn. It just basically makes your orbital insertion a bit more efficient. Faster, you know, more nice, easier, more controllable. If I get to the 90 degree marker, activate the autopilot, it should hold us there. Should. It's not doing the best job. Oh, there we go. You can see we're now starting to go a bit sideways. It's because we want to pick up as much lateral velocity as possible at a very high point. Because an orbit really is just falling. You're just falling so fast you miss the planet. Decouple that stage, and start the next stage's engine. You can see that falling down back to Earth. There's a little marker of how far it is. Now, by pressing M, I can actually go into the map view. Shows us the planet, shows us the moon, shows us the second moon, and ultimately shows us the solar system. This is our apoapse, our highest point above the planet, and that's our trajectory. We're currently on a ballistic trajectory, meaning we will, at some point, come back through the atmosphere. 36 kilometers is when you get into what is known as orbit around here, and 76 kilometers is when you reach space. That's when the atmosphere finally stops. So I'm going to put it into a 100-kilometer orbit. 100 kilometers above the surface of Kerbin. Bit of lag. Oh, there we go. Look at that. 1,000 meters per second. Now in orbit. There's our apoapse. That's our time to apoapse, by the way. Got a little marker underneath. 91, 95, and cut throttle using X. Now, the neat thing about KSP is you can use a thing called maneuver nodes. If I click here, it makes a maneuver node. Add maneuver. And by manipulating these here, retrograde, paragrade, I can make an imaginary trajectory for myself. That dotted line. By following the maneuver, that dotted line will become my real trajectory. So I want to raise my apoapse, and that's periapse, lowest point, 97 and 114. Pretty good. Make it a bit more even. See, 95 and 111. 111, 069. Okay. Come out of map view, you'll now see a blue marker here. If we turn to go and meet that marker, we can then burn for 24 seconds, it says, estimated burn time. And that's how long until we have before we reach the node. You want to burn partially before the node and partially after the node. Half it before, half it after, so the node is dead in the middle of your burn. This is the most efficient and most effective way to do it. Now the burn will require 1,211.7 meters per second of delta V. That's quite a bit of delta V. However, we actually have way too much. As I said, we'll most likely have enough delta V to get into orbit with this stage here, and we probably won't even need to use this one. If you can hear some piano, very quiet piano in the background, that would be my brother. He's currently doing a piano lesson. Oop, moving off track here. Now, I'm sure none of you want to sit here and watch me simply watching a spacecraft, like the rest of you. Activate RCS, there's the RCS. Watching a spacecraft float around for 1 minute and 19 seconds. So, this gives me an opportunity to show off one of the neat features of KSP. Time warp. I can warp time. If I'm getting bored, or I just want something to go faster, I time warp, so now we're moving at 10 times normal speed. Time is going down, I'm going to burn at, say, 20 seconds. So we'll come out of time warp at about 30. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, burn. Right on the mark. You can see this now beginning to come down. That's how long we have until we reach the node. How long the burn will take, so will be a bit afterwards. In reality, I burn too early, and I always burn too early, because I don't really like risking it, per se. Take a screenshot. Clicky clicky. Yep, some nice cinematic shots of this rocket flying around. Running out of delta V, and I'll move around a bit. Whoa, that was very, very excessive. Oh, we will need this stage after all. Getting a bit hectic here. Oh boy. Use RCS, try and get it under control. Interesting. Well, we're still getting into orbit, so it's all good. Oh, camera view switch. And cut throttle. Burn a bit more. I like to be pretty precise on this. Doesn't make too huge of a difference, but oh, 1.8 meters per second off. Pretty good. I delete the maneuver node. And see, we're now in orbit around Kerbal. That's why that line's now a circle. An apoapse of 121 kilometers above the surface and 86 kilometers low. Different to what you may recall was on the maneuver node. But regardless, here we are. I can now actually EVA Jebediah Kerbin, extravehicular activity, meaning that he will leave the spacecraft and go for a spacewalk. So I can let go and just float through the void of space. He does actually have a little jetpack, so you can make him fly around. There have been many people who have actually gotten Kerbals, that's what they're called, into orbit around moons, even planets, just by using this EVA pack. It can be a bit overpowered, actually. You can see how much fuel he has left, 96.2%. So yeah, let's line this up for a cinematic shot. I like cinematics, if you haven't noticed yet. Ooh, but very hectic. Very hectic to do so. Turn this way, won't you? He is falling away a bit from the spacecraft here. I may, in fact, actually use this for my YouTube channel cover. If I can simply make him face this way. And 3, 2, 1, quickly, quickly, quickly. Zoom in a bit. Screenshot. Whoa, big boost upwards. Shift is the key on a Mac to do the screenshot. I am in fact using a Macintosh. Go Apple, yes, I'm sorry. Alright, that's enough of that. I'm sure you're probably getting bored of watching a little space person walk around in respective space. So we will climb back on board our rocket, if we can find where the door is, and start heading back home. Seriously, where's the door? This may be an issue. Oh boy. Where's the door? Where? Oh, there, I think I see the door. Oh, there we are. Grab it! No! Quickly, come on. Wasting YouTube's time. Grab! Missed it. I'm actually doing a very bad job at this. I'm sorry. Grab. Yes! Nailed it. Alright. Board the spacecraft. We're now back on board, and you can see this marker here. This is the prograde marker on the nav ball. That means facing forwards. If we burn that way, we will increase our velocity. If we, however, turn our ship around and burn towards the retrograde marker, this will decrease our velocity and make us fall out of orbit because we won't have enough speed. So, I line myself up. Now, I like using up fuel, so I'll use this as well. Start burning the engine. You can see our velocity going down, and respectively, our orbit is starting to change. The periapse is getting smaller. We're now inside the atmosphere, almost hitting the surface. We are now actually hitting the surface. Or will be, at least very soon. Keep burning that. That's now out, so we can cut throttle, eject it, use our RCS to up a bit, down a bit, so we can get out of the way of it. 3, 2, 1. Fire retrograde boosters. That has changed our orbit drastically. You can see we are now falling on another ballistic trajectory, unfortunately onto the dark side. So you don't really get the most cinematic view here, sorry to say. We can now decouple that as well in a second after I make sure we're locked on target. Whoa, that's hectic. Okay. Should probably have just left it there. And decouple. See ya! Now it's just this little pod left of that big rocket we used to have, falling rapidly through the atmosphere. I can use time warp a bit here. Cannot time warp faster than 50 times, well below that certain height. Darn it. And soon we will re-enter the atmosphere, giving us re-entry effects. In reality, we would be burned to a crisp, because command pods in this game don't actually have heat shields. There is a mod plugin for that. It's called Deadly Re-entry, which requires the use of a heat shield while you're re-entering any body with an atmosphere. We don't have that, so we're fine. We will not, in fact, be incinerated, but will simply fall very fast. Alright, we're now reaching physics warp, meaning that we're no longer using time warp. We're still warping, but the physics are being multiplied. This can turn out to make some very bad glitches and rip your ships apart. But this also shows us that we're now being enacted upon by the atmosphere. So I'll stop physics warping. Normally it's not the best idea. But I'm bored. I'll start physics warping. You can see it makes things a bit hectic. Got a bit there. Back down, Jebediah comes, looking pretty happy. There's not really much to see out of this tiny window. You can see the stars up there now. But honestly, not too much. He is small pod. Very small. He's been cramped in there for, as you can see by the mission timer, 11 minutes. Interesting. Maybe time warp a bit. Continuing to fall here. We're now on the surface velocity meter. That means the game thinks we are now out of orbit. For sure. Oh, and starting to get re-entry effects. Lovely red flames. You can see our velocity is drastically dropping. It's because of atmospheric friction. That's actually why this happens. We're compressing the air, heating it up, and that's also slowing us down in the process. Getting very low very fast, so I will now Never do this in real life, kids. Deploy the parachute. In real life, that would have just been incinerated. You can see re-entry effects on it, too. It would be nothing left but ashes and dust. But it's a game, so we're fine. Once again. The game is pretty realistic, but not realistic to some things. And out of that now, look at how fast our velocity is decreasing. We used to be at 2 kilometers a second, 2,000 meters a second. We're now 350 about, and still dropping. The parachute is only semi-opened, as you may note. However, at 500 meters, it will open fully, and slow us down even more. I'll actually just leave our pod to sit now. Don't need autopilot anymore, we're falling. We can physics warp a bit. You just don't want to physics warp over the 500 meter point, because the g-force of the parachute opening is then multiplied, and it will most of the time just rip off, and leave you to fall to your inevitable doom. Like our boosters, or any of our other stages. Come out of warp, 700, 600, and parachute deployed. Now floating gently down at a 6.3 meters per second speed towards the ocean. In reality, that's pretty fast. Think about moving 6.3 meters in a second. That's like more than professional sprinters. I bet there's someone out there who can sprint that fast. So, just to prove me wrong, but it is still pretty fast. We can now physics warp safely all the way down. 250, 200, 150, 100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and splashdown. Safely back on Kerbin. Well, thank you for watching this video. I will be posting more soon. See you next time.